Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the two-player game, The Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, designed by Antoine Boza and Bruno Catala and published by Repo Production, who helped sponsor this video. Sauron's forces seek to reclaim the One Ring, corrupt the Free Peoples, and conquer Middle-earth. The only thing that can stop them is the Fellowship of the Ring. So pick a side, join me at the table, and let's learn how to play. To set up, put this central board in the middle of the play area, and below it, assemble these two Quest of the Ring track pieces. On its left side, add this clear tray with the illustrated side face up, so it covers this half of the track, and when placed correctly, this ring will be on top of the icon you see here. Then add this Nazgul piece to the far left of the plastic tray so its black ring borders this far left icon. These are the double-sided alliance tokens which you'll organize and stack into piles based on their matching backs. Shuffle each stack separately and set one into each notch above the central board. The order you place these in doesn't matter. These are the landmark tiles. Shuffle them into a face-down stack and then deal 3 of them face up into a row beside it like this. Now pick one person to play as the Fellowship and the other to play as Sauron. The Fellowship player collects all these pieces representing their units and fortresses, while the Sauron player takes these representing their unit and fortress pieces. The central board is made up of various named spaces known as regions, and the Sauron player now adds 2 of their units to the region named Mordor, and the Fellowship player adds 2 of their units to Arnor. Now create a reserve of these coin tokens, giving the Fellowship player 3, while the Sauron player starts with just 2. Finally, sort what are known as the chapter cards into 3 separately shuffled decks based on the runes showing on their backs, and just set them aside for use later. And that's the setup. In Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, you and the other player will be competing to be the first to fulfill any one of the game's 3 objectives. If you're the Fellowship player, you can win by advancing this tray so that the One Ring, shown here, reaches this Mount Doom space at the end. However, if you're Sauron, you can win if you move this Nazgul piece to the ring before it reaches Mount Doom. A player can also immediately win if they're the first to have 6 unique symbols on green cards they've collected. These represent gaining the support of the different peoples of Middle-earth. Finally, you may instead win by being the first to conquer Middle-earth, which is represented by having at least one of your pieces on every space of this central board. We'll see how you accomplish these goals later, but the first player to accomplish any one of them immediately wins. The game is played over 3 rounds, known as chapters, beginning with Chapter 1. When you're starting the first chapter, find the deck with a number 1 marked at its bottom and collect it. Now, using this diagram shown in the rulebook, deal the cards going left to right, top to bottom, into the arrangement shown for Chapter 1. And notice, some cards are dealt face up and some face down, based on whether or not the card is shown as light or dark colored in the diagram. So in this case, we'd start by dealing 2 cards face up, and then 3 cards would be dealt face down on top of those, then 4 would be dealt face up on top of these, and so on until it looks something like this. You'll have 3 cards left over, which you put unseen into a face-down discard pile. Also notice you'll find a helpful reminder of the chapter layouts here on the side of the box as well. With the chapter cards laid out, the game can begin, where turns will be taken starting with the Sauron player and then going back and forth. On your turn, you can either take a chapter card or take a landmark tile. So let's begin by learning how you take a chapter card. These are the cards we laid out in this pattern, and when resolving this action, you take any one available card. An available card is one that isn't covered by any other card. So at the start of the game, that means I can collect any one of these. But let's say it was later in the game and our chapter cards looked like this. As we'll see, face-down cards can be flipped face-up. And now our options would be to take this card, or this, or this one. We can't, for example, take this card since it's partially covered. Later in the game, as more cards have been taken, you might have a situation like we see here. In this case, if you want to take a card, you have to take this one, as it's the only available fully uncovered card. Either way, once you've taken an available card, you then use it in one of two possible ways. One option is to play the card in front of you. You then resolve any benefit the card provides, represented by the symbols found in this area. This is the symbol for coins, and its value means we now collect 2 coins from the reserve. Just be aware, benefits are always optional. You don't have to resolve them if you don't want to, but you'll usually want to. Sometimes a card will have a cost to play it in front of you, as shown by the symbols in this area. You don't have to pay the cost to take the card, just to play it. So this card is free to take, but to then play it and gain its benefit, I'd have to pay this coin cost, returning 1 from my personal supply back to the reserve. If you can't pay the cost, you can't play the card. However, when you take a card, playing it is only one option. You may instead freely discard it. To do this, put it face down into the shared discard pile we had already created with the 3 leftover cards from setting up the chapter. Then collect a number of coins from the reserve, matching the value shown here on its back. 1 coin when you discard a Chapter 1 card. So when taking a card, you either play it for its benefits, after paying any cost it might have, or you discard it to gain coins. During later turns, taking a chapter card will make a face-down card available. If so, you reveal it at the end of your turn. With that understood, let's go back to learning about the various benefits that cards can provide. Cards come in 6 different colors, each providing their own category of benefits, but you'll only find purple cards in the Chapter 3 deck, so we'll talk about those later. We saw an example of a yellow card earlier. These immediately provide you with coins when played. Gray cards are known as skills. These provide you with the skills shown at their top, which come in 5 different types known as ruse, strength, courage, knowledge, and leadership. When you play a gray card, add it to your personal area, and during the game, as you gain more cards of the same color, stack them on top of each other, keeping their benefits at the top visible. Skill symbols don't have an immediate effect. However, some cards show a cost in skill symbols. This means to play that card, you need to have that skill symbol showing on gray cards already in your play area. In this case, I do have the required courage symbol, so I could play this. In later chapters, the cost might show several skill symbols, in which case you'd need to have all of them in your play area. Just be aware, each copy of every symbol that you have can only be used once per turn. So to play this, I'd need 2 strength and 1 knowledge skill, but in this example, I only have 1 strength. However, if I had already had this card in front of me, well, then I'd have the symbols I need to play this. In later chapters, you'll find cards that provide more than 1 skill symbol on a single card. This, for example, provides you with 2 strength. However, if the skills on a card are separated by slashes, like we see here, that means you may only pick one of them to use during a turn, but you decide each turn which one you want to use. Now that said, you aren't completely out of luck if you want to play a card but don't have the required skill symbols it might require. You may always pay 1 coin back to the reserve for each symbol you're missing. So if I wanted to play this card, I could use these and then pay 1 coin for the second strength symbol I'm missing. Or if I didn't have any of these symbols, I could spend a total of 3 coins, 1 for each missing symbol, in order to play this. With that understood, let's learn the various benefits cards can provide. Blue cards move your characters along this Quest of the Ring track, advancing them 1 space per ring symbol. If the Fellowship is resolving a ring, they advance the tray so that this 1 ring symbol moves to the next icon. You'll notice that pulls Sauron's Nazgul piece along with it, but it doesn't get any closer to the Fellowship. On the other hand, if the Sauron player is resolving a ring they played, they leave the tray where it is and instead advance this Nazgul piece so that its black ring moves to the next icon. In this way, their piece is getting closer to the Fellowship of the Ring. If the Fellowship can ever advance the ring so that it reaches or would pass this Mount Doom icon, they have destroyed the one ring, the game ends, and they immediately win. However, if before that happens, the Sauron player's Nazgul piece ever advances to or goes past the same space as Frodo in the ring, the game ends and the Sauron player immediately wins instead. In the meantime, certain spaces you advance to might give you other benefits. For example, advancing to or past this icon gains you 1 gold from the reserve. Well, this benefit allows you to place one of your units into any of the named spaces on the central board, which are known as regions. Units are the pieces shaped like this. Well, these are the fortresses. Yellow pieces represent the Fellowship, and gray pieces represent Sauron. If you add one of your units to an empty region, nothing happens. But if you add a unit to a space containing enemy units, you must immediately resolve a conflict there. To do this, each player returns one of their units back to their personal supply, and then you'll continue doing that until at least one player has no more units left in that region. Just be aware, a conflict only occurs when units from both players are in the same region. We'll see later how fortresses are added to the board, and they're added to this area of a space, but as mentioned, I'll be lying the pieces down in this video. Just be aware, an enemy fortress in a region never triggers a conflict. For example, if the Fellowship added a unit to this space with a fortress, it doesn't cause a conflict. Now, if this unit was added here later, a conflict would occur, and each of these units would be removed, just like this. But fortresses are never removed during conflicts, and just so it's clear, an enemy fortress doesn't prevent you from adding your pieces to its space. Having at least one of your pieces in a space, either a unit or a fortress, is known as having presence there. After any required conflicts have been resolved, if a player has presence in each region of the board, as the Fellowship does in this case, they have conquered Middle-earth, the game ends, and they immediately win. Going back to the bonuses on the Quest of the Ring track, if you advance to a space with this symbol, you immediately take another turn after finishing the current one you're taking. And finally, if you advance to this benefit, you return any one enemy fortress from any region on the board back to that player. This is one of the few ways a fortress can be removed from play. And those are all the benefits found on the Quest of the Ring track. And you'll find reminders of all of these and every other type of benefit provided in the game on this handy double-sided player reference. So keep it nearby while playing. With the Quest of the Ring track understood, now let's go back to learning about the benefits provided by other cards you might play. Red cards let you place a certain number of your units into one region of Middle-earth. The number of units will be shown in the center, 1 in this case, and then you pick either of the two symbols on either side, which represent the region the units must be placed into. Every region has a symbol showing to its left here, so playing this card means I could add one unit to either of these two regions. Red cards in later chapters will allow you to place more than one unit, but they must all be put into the one region you choose. You cannot divide them between the two regions it shows. Next up, we have green cards. These will show one of 6 possible symbols representing the 6 different races of Middle-earth: elves, ents, hobbits, humans, dwarves, and wizards. As soon as a player has 6 unique race symbols played in front of themselves, they have rallied enough support to immediately end the game in their victory. But I should mention, playing green cards has another benefit during the game. As soon as you have 2 matching race symbols, you must immediately collect the top 2 alliance tokens matching that race and reveal them so both players can see. You then pick one of them to collect, putting it in front of yourself, and placing the leftover token face down back on top of its stack. You now gain the benefit from the token you collected. But as mentioned earlier, benefits are optional. You don't have to resolve them if you don't want to. This particular benefit means that each time you play a green card to the area in front of you, you may also resolve these two arrows. An arrow represents a movement, so here you can move twice. When resolving an arrow, move one of your units from the region it is in to an adjacent region, which is any connected to it by a red line. So I could move this unit to any one of these three spaces. If moving a unit causes it to enter a space with an enemy unit, pause and resolve the conflict there as we learned about earlier. If you're resolving more than one arrow, you complete them one at a time, but can assign both to the same unit or each to a different one. Just remember to resolve any required conflicts after each arrow is resolved. We're not going to go through all the race effects in this video, as how they work is described on this player aid, but feel free to pause the video if you'd like to get an idea of the types of benefits they provide. Most are ongoing, but any provided by Ents and Wizards occur once at the time you gain the related token. So as I mentioned, gaining two matching race symbols is one way to gain an alliance token. But once per game, as soon as you have three different race symbols in front of you, you collect the top alliance token from each of those three races and reveal them. You then pick any one of them to put face up in front of you, gaining its benefits, putting the other two back on top of their related stacks. And keep in mind, a single race symbol can be used to help meet both conditions: two matching symbols and three different symbols. But remember, each player can only gain the benefit of having three different race symbols once per game. And just so you're aware, across all three chapters of the game, you will only find 2 copies of each type of race symbol. So keep that in mind if you're considering how many of each symbol might be left to potentially collect. Now with that, we've covered the benefits found on every type of card except for purple ones, which only come into play during the 3rd chapter of the game, so we'll discuss those later. But to summarize, on your turn, you can take an available chapter card from the display and discard it to gain a number of coins equal to the value on its back, or you can play it in front of yourself for its benefit if you can afford to pay its cost. That said, instead of taking a chapter card on your turn, you can choose to take a landmark tile. 3 of these were set face up during setup, and you can pick any one of them to take on your turn by having its cost in skill symbols shown here and or paying coins for any of those symbols you don't have. However, landmarks also show this symbol representing a coin cost you must also pay equal to the number of fortress pawns you currently have on the central board. So if we were the Fellowship player and had no fortresses on the board, we'd pay no extra coins. However, if we had 2 fortresses in play, then we'd have to pay 2 coins as well as satisfying these skill costs. After paying for and collecting a landmark tile, you immediately gain its benefits shown at the bottom. This is the symbol for a fortress, and these symbols together mean that you now add a fortress from your supply to that related region of the board. And remember, fortresses don't start conflicts. This symbol means that we gain 5 coins from the reserve, and the arrow we know means we get to move any one of our units to an adjacent space, which could cause a conflict that you'd then have to resolve. Either way, after taking a landmark tile and resolving it, you do not replace it with a new one from the stack. We aren't going to go through all the landmark benefits in this video, but again, you'll find them all explained here on the reference sheet. And with that, we now know how to take a turn. You either take an available chapter card or a landmark tile. And after you take your turn, your opponent takes their turn. And back and forth you'll go like this until the final card of the current chapter has been taken. Then it's time to set up the next chapter. Here you take the cards of the next chapter's deck and arrange them according to the diagram shown on the side of the box. When finished, you'll have 3 leftover cards which you set unseen into the shared face-down discard pile. At the start of a new chapter, you also reveal landmark tiles as necessary until 3 are face up. If you run out of landmark tiles, just reveal as many as possible. Because players always alternate turns, the person who ended the chapter does not begin the next one. Their opponent does, unless they had just gained a take another turn effect, in which case they would get to go first in the next chapter. Now that we understand how a new chapter starts, I should point out that beginning in chapter 2, you will find a new way to pay the cost of a card. Notice this green chapter 2 card has skill costs, like you might expect, but there's also an icon here known as a chaining symbol. If you already have a card in your play area that shows that symbol in its top right-hand corner, then you can play this card for free, ignoring any of its other costs. That said, if you didn't have the related chaining symbol, you could still play this as normal, paying its skill or coin costs as usual. When you get to chapter 3, you'll find purple cards in its deck. And when playing one of these, you immediately resolve their related benefits if you like. These will mostly allow you to change the central board. For example, this symbol lets you remove any one enemy unit from any region. Here, your opponent loses 1 coin, returning it to the reserve. And this symbol, we know, allows you to move one of your units to an adjacent region, which could start a conflict. And those are all the cards and benefits you can resolve. And turns will continue back and forth until the game ends in victory by a player completing either the Quest of the Ring, or gaining the support of 6 races in Middle-earth, or by conquering Middle-earth itself by having their pieces present in all 7 regions. If none of these conditions are met by the end of chapter 3, the player who is present in the most regions of Middle-earth wins. And if there's still a tie, the tied players share the victory. And that's everything you need to know to play The Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I have a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can join our Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, thanks for watching.